When we go to the movies, we're usually just looking for an escape, right? A couple of hours to forget about everything. But what if I told you that those movies are doing something much, much deeper? What if they're not just entertainment, but they're actually the modern day myths that are shaping how we see absolutely everything?
And this quote, man, it just nails it. Think about it. For thousands of years, humans huddled around campfires, telling stories to figure out the world. Well, that campfire is now a glowing screen. But the reason we're all staring at it? It's exactly the same. We're still trying to make sense of our lives.
Okay, so why? Why do these stories grab us so hard? It's not just cool special effects or a great actor, right? There's something else going on. And the answer, believe it or not, is actually wired deep inside our own minds. And this was a huge deal back at the turn of the 20th century. All of a sudden, these brilliant psychologists started looking at ancient myths not as silly, primitive fantasies, but as a roadmap, a map to the human psyche itself. It's like they realized these weren't just stories, they were data. And right away, you see two big schools of thought emerge. On one hand, you've got Sigmund Freud. He thought myths were kind of like a society's dream, full of all its hidden anxieties and desires. But then comes his student, Carl Jung, who has this even bigger idea. He says, no, it's deeper than that. He believed myths bubble up from something he called the collective unconscious, a kind of shared psychic inheritance for all of humanity. So to really get what Jung was talking about, you have to understand this one key idea: archetypes. The simplest way to think about them is like character templates: the hero, the mentor, the shadow or villain. These aren't just characters, they're universal patterns that show up in stories everywhere, from ancient Greece to modern Hollywood. They're the basic building blocks. Yeah, check out some of the A-listers from this cast. You've got the shadow. That's basically all the dark stuff we repress, which is why villains are often so compelling. Then there's the wise old man, that classic Gandalf or Dumbledore figure representing our search for wisdom. So next time you're watching a movie, remember, you're not just watching characters, you're watching these ancient psychological patterns dressed up in modern clothes. Okay, so this is all great in theory, right? But what does it actually look like on screen? Well, let's zoom in on one of the all-time greats to see how a filmmaker can build a whole private mythology from his own inner world. We're talking about the legendary Swedish director Ingmar Bergman. For him, filmmaking wasn't just a job. It was therapy, it was an exorcism. He was literally battling his personal demons right there on the celluloid, turning his own anxieties and deepest fears into some of the most powerful films ever made. And if you watch his films, you start to see his personal code, his recurring motifs. Ticking clocks, lonely beaches, creepy puppets, these aren't just random props. For Bergman, that ticking clock is the sound of death approaching. That empty coastline is the feeling of being totally alone in the universe. It was his own private language for his own private myths. And where did all this come from? Well, this quote really gets to the root of it. Bergman was a son of a strict pastor. That upbringing basically handed him his life's obsession on a platter: God, death, faith, doubt. It was the raw material for his entire artistic world. All right, so let's pull way back from the intense personal world of an artist like Bergman and head straight for the Hollywood multiplex. Because over here, those same deep, mythic patterns get used in a totally different way. They become a formula. This really kicked off with a guy named Joseph Campbell. He was a mythologist who spent his life studying myths from every corner of the globe. And he noticed something incredible. A lot of them told the exact same basic story. He called it the monomyth, or the hero's journey. And you can bet Hollywood screenwriters saw this and thought, bingo, we can use that. And the basic blueprint is super simple, which is why it's so powerful. Step 1, a hero leaves their normal, boring world. Step 2, they face a bunch of challenges, maybe even a symbolic death and rebirth. And step 3, they come back home, but they're changed, transformed. That's it. That's the core journey. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Star Wars? Luke leaving Tatooine. The Matrix? Neo taking the red pill. Heck, even the Barbie movie fits the mold. She leaves her perfect world, faces the real one, and comes back changed. It's not just a lazy formula. It's tapping into a story structure that's been resonating with humans for thousands of years. The myth is the delivery system for the message. Okay, so we have personal myths, we have formulaic myths, but what's next? Well, some of the most interesting filmmakers today aren't just using the old myths. They're taking them apart, piece by piece, to say something new, to actually critique our modern world. A fantastic example of this is the 2024 film Substance. Now, on the surface, it looks like a gnarly body horror film. But if you look closer, it's actually a razor-sharp attack on one of our most toxic modern myths, the idea that women have to achieve eternal youth and beauty no matter the cost.
And to understand how the film pulls this off, we need a quick concept from a field called structuralism. It's called binary oppositions. It sounds complicated, but it's not. It just means that we understand things by what they're not. Good versus evil, light versus dark, youth versus old age. The film builds its whole critique around these simple, powerful pairing. And this shot from the movie, it's a perfect visual for this. You've got this messy, formless lump of dough and then a perfectly smooth, molded ball. That's it right there. Old age as messy and undesirable versus youth as perfect and controlled. The film is showing us the core logic of the myth in one simple, powerful image.
Let's actually decode a quick scene to see this in action. The literal action, the denotation, is simple. A female employee gets fired by her male boss. But what's the connotation, the deeper meaning? Well, the boss isn't just a boss. He represents a power structure that values youth. And her reflection in the mirror isn't just a reflection, it's her own despair. The whole scene is powered by these hidden oppositions, youth versus age, male versus female.
And here's where it gets really clever. The film starts weaving in those ancient myths we were just talking about. When the main character uses the substance, it's like she's opening Pandora's box, unleashing something she can't control. Her obsession with her new, younger self, that's the myth of Narcissus, falling in love with his own reflection. It's all in there. And it all leads to this absolutely brutal final image. The younger, perfect self violently destroys the original aging creator. The film is taking that cultural myth that youth must replace old age and making it literal, physical, and horrifying. It's showing us the end point of this obsession. The beautiful one literally has to kill the ugly one. Which brings us right back to the beginning. If movies really are our modern mythology, then what stories are we telling ourselves? What are we saying about who we are and who we're supposed to be? Because the stories we put on screen aren't just entertainment. They're the myths we're choosing to live by.